Well, yesterday I glued up the top for the TV lift cabinet, and I did make a video, but there's a few things that I forgot to mention, and one is what kind of wood I'm using. And so the wood is sapele, and I'm using it because it really has a very nice grain, and it's also a very stable wood. Now, another thing I thought I should mention is the design for the top to accommodate a lid so the TV could rise and retract into the cabinet. It's basically made up of 3 boards. So I have a board in the back, a board in the center, and a front board. And I've taken the board in the center and I cut a section out of that board large enough for the TV so that could become the lid. Took that section of the board, put it to the side, and then I took the 3 boards and joined them together. If you look down the length of the top, you can see that the grain in the wood is uninterrupted by the door. And I think that looks really nice, but also it made building the top and allowing for the door pretty easy. And the reason for that is once the boards were figured out, the widths of the boards, the only thing that I need to do now is remove this board from the top, which is just attached with a hinge, and attach these boards together with a few biscuits. The boards are lined up and labeled in the direction that they will be assembled. And that's why I have a 1, 2, and a 3. And the white chalk line is there as an indication mark for the biscuit joiner to create a slot for the biscuit. I've already glued the center board to the back, and now I'm going to attach the front board. And the reason why I'm gluing the top up in 2 sections is just because it's easier to handle that way. Well, that's it for today. I'm going to let the top set up overnight, and I did just get rid of any glue. I always like to get rid of the glue before it dries up. Now, tomorrow I'm going to put the lid back inside the top and then sand the whole top with the lid in place. And that will give me an opportunity to feather out any high spots that are either in the lid or in the top itself. Okay, well, it's tomorrow, and I've already removed the clamps, and now I'm going to attach the lid and start to sand the top. Okay, well, that's my last screw, and I thought I should add that it's a good idea to put a little soap on the threads of the screw, and that will make it less likely that you'll strip the screw or, even worse, break the screw. Now, I'm going to put some tape on the door so I can reopen the door, and we'll close it and see how it fits. And it looks pretty good. This side's a little bit high here, so I'm going to have to sand that down. Now, before I do that, though, I'm going to bring the top upstairs and put it on the cabinet and just run the TV up and down through the lid once or twice to make sure everything is just right before I give the top a final sanding and then start to finish it. Well, it's always nice when things work out. The next step is to bring the top back downstairs into the wood shop and give it a good sanding. Well, I'm back downstairs in the wood shop, and before I start to sand the top, I remembered that I need to drill 2 holes under each bookcase, and that's for electrical access. And to drill those holes, I'm going to use a 2H brad point drill bit. You may have noticed that the drill is making kind of a funny sound, kind of like that. And the reason for that is I set the clutch a little bit heavier than medium. And the reason why I did that is when you're drilling a big hole, the drill can have a lot of torque, and if it catches on the wood, it will really twist your wrist. So it's just a little safety precaution I like to take. Now, as far as sanding, the boards, I bought the boards S4S, so they're surfaced on 4 sides. So this top is already pretty smooth. So I don't really have to get that low with my sandpaper grit, so I'm going to start out with 80, and then I'm going to move to 120, and then I'll finish sanding the top with 220. Well, I finished sanding the top, and I eased the corners with a roundover bit in my router, and it only took about a minute. Obviously, I'm kidding. All in, I got about 5 hours preparing the top for stain, but you'll see that all that hard work is really going to pay off. I'm using dark walnut stain by Minwax that I've cut by 50%. So it's half stain out of the can and half paint thinner. I've let the stain sit for about 5 minutes, and now I'm going to remove it with a cotton rag. And you just want to remember to wipe with the grain. Now there's only one more step before I can bring the cabinet to the job site and install it, and that's to make and hang the doors. I'll do that next time. Thanks for tuning in. Well, yesterday I glued up the top for the TV lift cabinet, and I did make a video, but there's a few things that I forgot to mention, and one is what kind of wood I'm using. And so the wood is Sapele, and I'm using it because it really has a very nice grain, and it's also a very stable wood. Now, another thing I thought I should mention is the design for the top to accommodate a lid so the TV could rise and retract into the cabinet. It's basically made up of 3 boards. So I have a board in the back, a board in the center, and a front board. And I've taken the board in the center and I cut a section out of that board large enough for the TV so that could become the lid. Took that